I want to talk about the character Marx. We have gone through a massive discussion with Sadie and Sam and how they internalize or externalize their trauma and how they just communicated, but the fact that they can't and the whys. And it's so fascinating really going into the psychology of it. Marx is such a different character because he's not flawed.
Mhm.
He's just so wonderful. And everyone has fallen in love with the glue of the group, the generous, good looking, wonderful, lucky, positive, gracious, you name it. We all want either to be Marx or to have a Marx in our life. At what point in writing this did you know that you were going to render us just sobbing messes?
You know, I didn't know at the beginning, so I do outline repeatedly, and I definitely like, many, many times, and I like to know a sense of where the ending is going to be when I start out. But I like to know the title, and I really didn't have either of those things, so I kind of just dove
Mm.
into this blind to an extent. But you like to know where the ending is because then you have some sense of how you're going to land the plane. But certainly, I at different points thought other people would survive and other people would die during that section of the book. You know. And so it would have been a very different story if that thing had happened. That I did think there could be other arrangements of things that happened at that point. But with regard to Marx, I always think, it's easier to be Marx than to be Sam or Sadie.
Oh, yeah.
I think he was born wealthy, good looking, and he again. I think his major quality is that he's not somebody who's tortured about having been born wealthy and good looking. It's
Yeah,
like
he's
it's
like,
somebody
where's
who's
the Nepo baby shirt kind of deal.
right.
Yeah.
It makes him more generous and more expansive. And I have met people like for whom that happens, and feel like an envy of them, like the way they walk through the world as if it's like some kind of like art project, or
Mhm.
something. And so, but I did actually have a sense as I was writing Marx that like, I didn't want him to feel like 100% fully real until you get to the NPC. Because it won't like blow your mind until you're like in that section then, unless you're like thinking, you know,
You can't even,
are you okay?
sorry, you can't even, phew, you can't even say NPC to without wanting to cry. Ugh, why did you do this to me? I have so many tissues on standby for this.
Well,
Oh,
I'll tell you, like from my point of view, like that whole section was really, really difficult to write. But what I
good,
thought it
good.
was, but what I thought about it was, you know, it was a tribute, to me. The Marx character is he represents all the people in my life that have like facilitated and helped me. So like my name is my 10th novel. My name is on the book, but there are lots and lots of relationships I have and people that are the ones that like go out into the world and say, you must read this. And, frankly, I have hundreds of Marxes professionally. They're not all necessarily as dreamy, but I, really it is a tribute to all those people that are really in my creative life that aren't like strictly speaking like creative,
So you're the
and
horse, and they are the
yeah, I am a
tamers.
horse.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Oh,
remember like this is like a silly story, which was so at one point I guess Carrie Fisher married Paul Simon, right? And so the film director like Mike Nichols said when they divorced, too many roses, not enough gardeners, something like that.
oh, that's funny. Was that in one of
And
Carrie's books as well? Because she writes
I
about her
think
life
it
in
was.
such a great way.
I think it was in one of her books, but I think I heard it on
Postcards.
like a
I
yeah,
have it in my bookshelf.
yeah,
Postcards from something. Yeah,
yeah,
great.
Postcards from the Edge, yeah.
That's it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I was thinking about that kind of thing, like how we need gardeners. So like that was definitely like the tamer of horses thing, and it was a really tough section to go to because I knew what I wanted as the effect. I wanted it to be like you were all of a sudden thrust into this other point of view,
Mm. But you almost had to
and
piece
you're
it together. Yeah. And then
right,
when it
and you're
clicks, you're
seeing the
just like,
world through his eyes,
yeah.
and what it is to be Marx in a way. We've never really been with Marx in
Mm.
that way, and so I wanted it to feel gutting. You hope that it does, but I certainly struggled over it a bit, like that in the Pioneer section were the two I
Yeah.
probably labored the most over because they're the most experimental. And I think people sometimes think that the point of a book is just to entertain you on every single page, but sometimes you want it to do other things. At 10 novels, sometimes I want there to be resistance. I want it to slow down and to make you think like, what exactly is happening, and to kind of shift your brain into a different place. And
Yeah.
I know some people won't go with me. A lot of people have gone with me, but there'll be some people who are just like, I don't want to go into that point of view, and I don't want to I don't want to be in that video game.
I've got another question here, which kind of goes into editing and what made it and the structure of the book. But Chris says, what, if anything, did you edit or have to lose from the book?
There wasn't much that I lost from the book. There was a section with Marx that involved that involved him thinking about converting to Judaism because
For,
it's like the
For
sense
Sadie?
for Sadie, yeah. And so, like,
What?
anyway, so Sadie says, "I can't marry you." You know, he proposes at one point, and
Yeah.
like Sadie says, "I can't marry you." And Mark said, and he's like, "Why?" You know, like at this point, they've been in a relationship, they bought a house, you know, and the real reason is because she's really already married to Sam, I think. But the truth is,
Oh,
she can't marry him. So she says it's because you're not a Jew. And we've never once seen Sadie, other than in Making Solution and her relationship with her grandmother,
yeah.
like seem like she cared that much about that. So Mark's kind of like calls her bluff and he goes and takes like a conversion class for people thinking about marrying. And so that was the thing that was cut from the book. That was a nice thing, but like kind of set this down like a strange, maybe a strange path for a bit.